Yeah, should be. All right, good morning, everybody. How are you? Good, good. Hey, a few things I just wanted to mention before we get into our story. I just wanted to, if you see somebody like Cassie or Brandy or anybody that you know has a part of putting this thing on, I believe this is his second year, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so 2 years, and this thing is looking really good, okay? And let them know that, because it's hard work. I know it's maybe easier for us to come in and point out some things we'd like to see otherwise, but it's real hard to put this sort of thing on, especially if you're trying to do it from the ground up, all right? So I think they're doing a great job, and again, who doesn't like praise, right? So, with that being said, so my name is Jason, this is Bella, she is my oldest daughter, and we lived in the city for about 12 years before we actually got out to the country. We bought a foreclosed property, it was an abandoned small hobby farm, and the weeds were taller than Bella when we got it, not now, but when we bought it, of course. And so we had a little bit of a challenge to, let's go on the other side here, because I keep staring at this black dog here. Come on up. So we basically had to retain what we had purchased and reclaim it, if you will. There was an abandoned old farmhouse on there, and so we've been pouring our heart and soul into it. But along the way, we did get some animals, and we got some chickens to begin with. And if you were here yesterday, you got the long, drawn-out versions. We're not going to go into that today. But essentially, she had the interest to do some rabbits. And growing up, my parents and grandparents on both sides did rabbit hunting. And that was a thing. I was, as a kid, before I could shoot, I was the beagle, okay? And so that was a fond memory of mine. There's a brush pile, go kick them up, Jason. So I'd run over there and kick them up, and of course, they'd shoot them up, and I get to eat them up. So it was a great deal. You know, nothing more fun for a boy to go out there, run, make noise, and hit things with sticks. I mean, it was good stuff. And so I'm gonna try to do this without crying, I don't know. So, growing up and trying to recognize that these things that I had were probably better than I realized or understood, you know, being intentional as a parent was something my wife and I knew we wanted, even though we didn't necessarily know what our intentions needed to be or what we wanted them to be. So, of course, we pride a lot of our advances on our faith in the sense that God gave us an understanding and a knowledge and even the ability to see things that are greater than what we were seeing around us. So, in the pursuit of that, we started to build a homestead. I always wanted to be self-sufficient, and one of the models in Boy Scouts that I loved most was always be prepared. So that made me an overpacker. And so I became strong because I had too much in my backpack. So anyway, in doing so, the intentional living helped us to kind of reevaluate and evaluate things, and why are we doing it, and what can we be doing better, and what would serve us, and so raising our own animals was kind of a no-brainer, because we like good food, we like it to taste good, and we like it to be good. And so, you know, the old adage, you are what you eat, well, I would argue, and I'd say you are what your animals eat. And so we were finding out that it was a lot easier to raise good quality meat than it was for us to go out and buy it, or at least, you know, we don't have money falling out of our pockets, so it's easy for us to do that sort of thing. Plus, there's a connection there too, when you take time and energy and building something up, and you have more of a familiarity. You can study as much as you want on YouTube University, and you can learn a whole bunch of stuff, and that's good, and I do that. But, you know, there's nothing that replaces on-the-job training, right? So anyway, rabbits, right? So she comes to me and she says, I want to get rabbits. I said, okay. So we start looking on Craigslist, and I love to hunt. I love getting on Craigslist and finding things. And so we came across a guy, and here, I'm going to get off my stories all along the way. She's going to steal them. She's like, you better hurry up. But this is important. All right, so the thing I like about homesteading is that you meet good people along the way, just like this. This is like a culmination of all the good people in one spot. If they wanted to get rid of the good people, they'd drop a bomb right here and we'd all be gone. The idea is that there's a whole bunch of like-minded people here doing what you're doing, and as you're buying and selling the things for homesteads, you're going to keep bumping into them and learning more about your community. And that community is also an extremely valuable resource outside of land and animals and whatnot. Because we might not be able to do all the things, but the community can pick up anything that we can. All right, you want to take it over because I'm just going to keep talking. This is mine. Okay, here we go. All right, so today we're going to go through dispatching and butchering. And so, again, as I gave the disclaimer yesterday, we are not the end-all and be-all for rabbit butchering or husbandry, okay? We've done this, successfully fed people from this, so I would say that we can check the box of, we passed, all right? And so this stand that we have built here, this was built in the last 72 hours.
It was like, oh no, we can't move our huge stainless steel sink.
Right, so we have a sink that's not quite this long and really heavy, and it requires everybody to grumble before they actually get over and help.
It's nice having running water right there though. So.
It is. So we're going to do this in buckets versus running water. So some of the things that we would do differently if we were at home, we'd have the hose there, we'd be considering where's the runoff going so that we're not going to get all mucky and nasty. Things to hose off a little easier. The reason that it's spray painted quickly black is so that you can't see the blood as easy. All right, it's silly, but I can then tuck this away. We can host people, and my wife's not embarrassed by having it around, or people aren't grossed out by it. I like to be sensitive to people that don't necessarily like that sort of thing or appreciate it. All right, everybody's at their place.
Another thing we would have is we do have a big stainless steel table, and I have to say that is a big blessing having a nice flat clean surface and not just a table with a piece of plywood on it.
Right.
That's where we started.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's one of the main themes for our homestead is that, and I said this yesterday, if anything's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly. Okay, so go out there, just get out there, get going, and figure out what you need to, and figure out what you're like, it would really be an improvement if we did this one thing or replace this one thing. And so I just recently bought a little machine that breaks the beads on little tires, okay, because I don't buy new tires and tubes at the Tractor Supply store. Whenever they go flat, I repair them, and my sons grumble about how much of a pain in the rump it is to break the beads on it, the 2 bars, and so I spent $75 and I bought that little cheap machine. So, those sort of things that are invaluable as you go and you start building up and think, but you are where you are, and so you don't need this. My dad, my grandpa, he used to use basically 4 nails in a tree. And that's how you would do it, you would put it up there.
We've done that method before. The 2 screws in a tree actually works surprisingly really good.
Right, so we thought about bringing the tree here, and it just didn't work out. So here we are, all right? And
so yeah, feel free to take pictures of it if you want to mimic it. Like I said, it was very easy to build, and we did buy stainless steel pieces off of online.
This is, the original hopper popper kit, if you will. This is the part, in my opinion, this is the part that really matters. This is the cervical dislocator, okay, or the neck breaker.
Yeah, so after the fact, if you want to come up and take that a little bit, feel free.
Right, and it is a little pricey for what you're looking at, but it's stainless steel. It's a family-owned business out of Oregon. And I think they do good for, very good quality. And again, it's functional, not necessarily pretty.
Yeah, and it's called the Hopper Popper. So if you look up Hopper Popper, lots of people sell it. So.
Yeah, that's right. Well, actually, the only one family made. That's why you say the original Hopper.
Yeah.
Right. So this is hanging up here. So we're going to essentially tuck its legs back here, and we'll talk through the different steps. But you can do this a number of different ways. And so we've used ropes with a little knot in it. We've seen it with cable. We've seen it with chain. I mean, there's
screws.
Yeah, screws, nails, whatever. This is not necessarily our favorite method, but it's the tidiest to bring around in a package. So, yeah. All right. Okay, so then go ahead.
All right, so disclaimer, after the rabbit is dispatched, it will still move, even though it is fully dead, but the nervous system in livestock keeps going on if you've chopped a snake's head off before. Obviously, it still moves. So
yeah, so you understand that when we
disclaimer, if you see the rabbit moving, it is dead. It is not feeling any pain, but its nerves are.
So there's actually 2 statements, but I'm going to call you out as a fact checker here, okay? So it's not technically dead because the heart's still beating, right? The pain is gone.
Yeah.
All right. So the brain is the part that processes the pain and fear and all that stuff, right? You guys want to go in biology class. And once you dislocate that, the rabbit is technically not feeling pain. Now there's lots of life left in the body, and the heart will still be beating. We were doing this so fast the other day that we noticed that. So, and actually, if you don't take the time to cool the body down in ice water or whatever after you've skinned it and you start cutting things apart, cutting into it, you're going to notice the electricity still in the nervous system and the muscles will twitch. which is kind of creepy to be honest with you.
Even with
Pretty
just
hard at
straight
first.
meat, no guts in it, so, alright.
There you go. All right. So, what again? When I said the end all be all, that we're not that, but we're successfully we've gotten through this. Honestly, one of my biggest fears is not properly dispatching the rabbit. And so I don't want to say I hope I don't do a great job now, but I want you to understand this is a real struggle and challenge. And if you're not doing it somewhat regularly, you might have that situation. And so it might be easier for you if you want to dispatch it with something like a 22 short or something like that. Again, firearm safety, disclaimer, okay? But the idea is that they are prey animals, and they're fighting for their lives whenever you take them. Even if you're just moving them from one box to another, they're giving it all they got. Okay, so you kind of got to know what you're doing, and I have long sleeves for a reason. Bella got some really nice war wounds there the other day across her wrist. Those back legs are vicious. They will tear you up, and they'll tear skin, and I mean it'll go deep. So just kind of know what you're doing, and I use my body, if you will, my legs or my stomach, my chest, to try to isolate any of that movement, and of course my upper body strength to just kind of calm it down. And if you can tuck the head, that's always helpful. So the one thing that I like to do is be in control of the rear legs. Like I said, those are the real weapons there. They can get you with the front ones, but really the damage is done with the back. Okay. Anything going out on that? All right. We just get into it. All right, let's do it. All right, so I'm going to set the mic down. She's going to bounce back and forth.
I was going to say too, if you're having trouble hearing, just move in a little. We can turn the fans off and you can hear better, but we all would be sweating together. So come in close if you can't hear, because if I turn it up anymore, then it's going to start ringing.
All right. And I'm just going to yell real quick because they're too far away here. Some of our setup, I accidentally bought this, and it's been a blessing. This is what I use. Actually, this is what my kids use to sharpen my knives. Thank you so much. Okay, so I have a lot going on, and I'm managing a lot in my professional life, and then as well at home in the homestead and the family. And so to be able to delegate one of the things that I don't necessarily need to be there for, sharpening a knife, that's one to buy a very sharp pocket knife, which is not the case 5 years ago. So the idea is that my 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 15-year-old will sharpen my knives for me and keep mom's knives sharp in the kitchen. That's worth its weight right there. Okay. So, again, we have a clipboard over there. If you want to know about any of the equipment that we're using, we can send you a link and where we've got it from. It's not special, but it's what we use. And if you're just going to say, hey, I don't want to think a whole lot. Show me what it is that you guys are using. We're going to send kind of like a summary email. Thank you.
Yeah, so put your email on the paper or whatever it is. Okay, so yeah, if you put your email on there, we will send links out to the tools we use and these knives that we got recommended from a professional butcher friend of ours that we absolutely love, stainless steel knives.
Really cheap.
So, yeah.
$15. Okay, $15
To our doorstep, so that was really amazing. I unfortunately did support something like Amazon, but you can find it elsewhere. But again, really nice, cheap. I was using Grandpa's old knives, and that was such a mistake. I mean, they were wore out. They were boning knives. They were too thick. I had lost all that steel over the years, and so it was really worth the $15. And again, the butcher friend said that was the way that he goes to sharpen it.
Yeah, he is a professional butcher. He does have a shop and he does sell meat. He does this for a living. So we're like, if you like it, it's good with us.
And so I'm a purist. I'm like, okay, 3 stones, oil, soak it, blah, 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 do all that. And I was like, that's not practical. I can't do that. And that's what I'll do in retirement. Is I'll get the stones out and I'll do that right at some point in time. It's just not a priority in my life right now. So, all right. So what I like to do is to grab the back right ahead of the hips. Okay, so some of you, it's kind of hard. Actually, let me spin. A little easier there, huh? And so I like to do it with my right hand because I'm right-handed, and so I like to have my thumbs ahead of the legs. Now, by the way, be intentional because as soon as she knows something's up, you're on. All right, it's game time. So I'm going to grab right there. I'm going to have a good little force. What you're doing is you're grabbing all those muscles right back there, right above the hip, and that gives me a fair amount of control over what she's doing. She pretty much knows it, and I don't want to say gives up, but doesn't fight quite as hard. And then with the front, I'm not really sold yet on what I'm doing. Sometimes I grab the haunch, I don't know what you call this, the scruff. Sometimes I've grabbed the ears, I don't really like that. I try to get the front paws whenever possible, but I don't get picky sometimes, I get back in. Okay, so right now she's like, okay, something's going on, she sat down. So again, this is where you can walk away bleeding, or she can walk away bleeding, one of them, not walk away, or she can be bleeding, okay? So it's all about this right now. So I'm gonna go because I can't, maybe I can get her front legs in here, all right? And so now I have the front legs and the back, and if I can transition, this is like jiu-jitsu here, okay? So now if I can transition to the rear legs, then I have control. All right?
Yeah, so for younger rabbits, there is a spot right behind the hind legs. You can use these 2-3 fingers, and for younger rabbits, you can technically hold them like that, dangling, and they're fine. Older rabbits need a little more support, but younger rabbits, you need to move from one cage to the next, just wrap right behind the leg.
Why don't you also talk about the age?
Yeah, so for butchering,
what are we doing today?
we're doing a 3.5 to 4 month old. I have to get my paper out. Rabbit, she's probably about 3 months. So 3 to 4 months is the ideal butcher age. A lot of people go by age, a lot of people go by weight. We go by both and our schedule. So 5 to 6 pounds is a good butcher weight. Anything above age, obviously, if you're doing 6 to blank years, it's going to be a lot harder to skin and process in general. So try to stay.
It can still happen.
Yeah, try to stay in that sweet spot, even if you wait till 5 months. Just, especially, we will talk, if we have enough time, a little about tanning the hides. So for tanning, the ideal is like 4 months and under. 3 to 4 months is like the sweet spot for a good hide. Anything older is a little bit trickier.
You tell who's holding the rabbit here and who's talking. So, yeah, keep it close for a second. Okay, so again, now I've got to transition to grab those legs. She is, because it's been time between the last time I grabbed her, she's not so much, she's settling into the idea that I've got control over her right now. She doesn't like it, but that's just kind of how it's going, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get the chin over the bar. Okay, so she's going to do a chin up, if you will, and the back of her head is going to go on this diagonal, on the outside of this diagonal bar right there, okay? And honestly, I'm not going to talk through this slowly because for her sake, I want to do this quickly. And so when you know you have a successful dispatch is when the neck and head instantly go limp. The body is going to kick. All the energy is going to go to the legs and the arms. She's going to do what she can to give the last bit of energy or electricity that she has in her body out. Okay, and that's normal and that's okay. And I'm going to transition her then up to the bar, and I'm going to bleed her out. Okay, and the reason I do that is that there's several things. It's going to be messy, and sometimes I would remove the head completely. Depends on if we're going to tan or not, because it makes it easier to field dress.
Yeah, if you take the head completely off, if you want to tan, and take the front paws completely off, it's a lot less messy, so you don't have to wash the hide itself or blood. But also there are lots of videos out there on YouTube of how to use the hopper popper, so if you can't see, just go look at a YouTube video.
Right, again, so I'm using my legs here, which is easier, so if you don't have the upper body strength that I might have, or you can use your leg. Legs are a lot easier to accomplish some work. So that's one of the reasons why we have it on the ground. We've had it waist height, we've had it up higher. We prefer this so far.
Yeah, it's a little easier to get that pull. Right.
Okay, here we go. Okay, so you see that I lost control, right? So what did I do? I brought her into my legs. I'm wearing pants that are well thick enough, they're not shorts, let's just say that, okay? So now I've got to somehow get hold of her front paws again. Hey, it's okay to stop, pause, and start over, all right? Remember, you're the one controlling this. You're not doing it as a presentation, so just slow it down, do what you need to do, get comfortable, gain composure again, watch a video. We've done that before. We're like, okay, that wasn't awesome. You know, let's do this. We've had it in the rack before. We're like, wait a minute. So what's the cleanest, best way to get around this situation? Fastest way. Okay. So I like to have the ears. I like to have the ears on the outside and up there. Now this is it right here. It's done. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stand up. I'm going to grab both legs. I'm going to give them. Okay. That was Another thing that you can do is you can come up, you can see her head is floppy, and if you wanted to, you could grab the front part of the body and you can touch the eyeball. If she will let you touch the eyeball and not put her head back or away, it's done, okay?
Like I said, lots of life left.
So right now I'm just gonna go ahead and tuck. This is honestly a little bit awkward. I have to, because I've done it,
The last couple of days.
because we've done it the last couple of days, I'm a whole lot more familiar with how to do this and how to tuck in. But basically you go in through here, and then you got it just like that. And you want to bring, if you know the makeup of the bone structure of their back paw, back leg, if you will, this is coming right to that crevice or V, and that's what's holding it. It's not really this. This tucks it in and locks it, okay? But ultimately it's happening right there. Okay, so I'm going to hurry up and do this.
Another thing is, we have in the past had it happen, believe it or not.
I'm gonna do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm pulling the neck fur right here. Now, I have a fair amount of command of the knife. If you're not familiar with this, be careful, okay? So we're working with really sharp knives. So I'm coming here, I'm pulling the skin away from the body, and I have the slack. I'm going to puncture through and cut down, and then I come back and I sweep and try to catch that aorta. Or somebody who knows bodies, please let me know what it is. Is it aorta, right?
Carotid.
Carotid. Okay, there you go. Thank you. Again, not a professional, just a survivor. That's all.
And the reason we are bleeding the rabbit out is less meat, less blood in the meat.
So there's all different ways, if you want to bring this to the cuisine level, that you could do this better. Okay, but we're in more of a feed a large family survivor mode here, okay? And so one of the things that we've noticed is that when we bleed out the neck here, there's less blood clotting in that neck muscle, and I personally like that neck muscle. There's an old saying, closer to the bone, sweeter the meat. I personally like that, especially if we've like slow cooked or crock-potted it. It's really, really good meat. And so lately, because of speed and what we were doing is that we're feeding them to the dogs. We also like to feed our dogs really good meat. So they don't care about blood clots. As a matter of fact, they like it quite a bit. And so depending on what we're trying to do, that's why we're doing it. All right.
Yeah, we are going to keep the hide on this one because I have a brother at home that said, that's my rabbit, keep the hide. So he's going to be tanning it. So we are taking it home, and that's why we're taking the head completely off on this one.
Okay. One thing I want to note too is that because I'm not a professional butcher, I don't always know where the separation of the anatomy is. And so I ultimately then have a backup knife. And so what I'm probably going to do is come in contact with the bone and dull my knife. I can get through 6, 8, 10 rabbits on one good sharpening here, so I'm not really worried about it. But again, it's just like what's really important. If you want to be that precise person, figure it out. Okay, slow down, find it, do it. But again, I'm kind of rough. I'm more of a shotgun than a rifle in this situation.
So again, pull up the skin here and get underneath there. Otherwise, because that hide will take a lot of abuse from the knife.
And slow you down because it's loose and moving. Not so much that the knife's dull or that it's that really strong. Anything, if you can't get a good main surface area on there, you're basically not gonna get one very far, okay? So I'm gonna get underneath there and then I'm gonna grab the ears at this one time and cut through.
If, for whatever reason, the bone did not break perfectly in the back of the neck, which the goal is to break that neck bone. Sometimes you can cut straight through with a knife, sometimes because of where it broke you can't. So we are using a good old-fashioned Kreke. We have yet to buy a good one, but we're like last minute we need one. So
It's really good. It's good
Quality steel here. It's an insert. It's not cast. So they made them like this. You go to a flea market, you find something like that. You want to look down, make sure you don't see too much daylight. Ultimately, you're cutting bones, not flesh, so it's really not a big deal. Took it apart. There's a scissors feature on that.
yeah, we did sharpen it
Yeah.
before, so
Okay.
it's a little easier to cut.
Get in there, get where
Where you're going, and I'm only cutting through the bone. Okay, when I hear the crunch, I'm done. You can try to cut through the flesh, but again, because it's squishing around, you're not really getting a good cut. So I'll go back to the knife.
Again, keeping your hand
Yeah,
real
the
clear.
avoid of, the reason we like to use that is because we don't really want to have to stop, switch knives, or stop and sharpen a knife. So that avoids the knife on bone situation. So you just always have a clean knife, and it just goes easier with a really sharp, clean knife.
Okay, I think I look really cool with the towel back here. Makes it look like I know what I'm doing. And so that's why it's there. Actually, it's for my utensils. And that's
Yeah, we try to dip and wipe a lot because we want to not have hair on the meat, and that's to avoid a lot of cleaning.
Okay. It's gonna happen. I'm gonna get fur on there, okay? Because I'm probably shaking because I'm nervous about explaining things to people. And I'm like, oh, there's somebody out there that knows more than me, and they're gonna be, critiquing me. It's gonna happen, but it comes off a whole lot easier, I think, than chickens and whatnot because we leave the skin on versus the skin in. So same principle, same purpose, right here. Oh, over here, you're over there. You're on the same side too. So you pinch this, and what I'm doing is I'm puncturing again the skin, and I'm going to do it as close to this little V thing as you can because what I'm going to do is pull the hide down at that point in time. And honestly, starting it is like the most difficult thing to do. And on a deer or a cow or a pig, I like to cut because it's easier to see. With all the fluff here, it's really hard to tell when you get through that skin. And so, and that was actually a trick that I had learned from one of our homesteading mentors, Rich. And he pinched the skin, poked through, and I was like, it's so smart. You know what I mean? And you do this enough, you do it with other people, you start learning those little tricks that help you and make your talents just that much more usable.
Yeah, so also we're just trying to avoid cutting into the meat. I know he's going to try to step aside after he explains, or before he explains, and then he's going to have to get in the way. It's a little awkward to butcher on the side, So, yeah, the reason we are starting here is because when we're all done gutting and skinning the rabbit, we're going to cut those top hind legs off. So the higher you can get, the more meat you have, essentially.
Okay. So what I like to do at this point in time, I don't know, I've seen these videos where these guys skin these things in like 30 seconds. It's amazing. I mean, guts and all ready to go. And I'm just like, wow, I'm just not that guy. Okay, it's cool. I learned some things from them, but ultimately, I kind of like what I'm doing here. I don't know, I'm sick. I just like that. Making food for my family, it makes it real. I have somewhat of a desk job otherwise, and so it kind of keeps me grounded. Okay, so what I like to do though is come in again, picking up the skin, getting underneath here, and I'm trying to leave that far back. I'm going to end up cutting myself. So I want to be aware of the tip because the tip's doing the work right now, and you see how it's kind of like tapered right there. What it's doing is it's going in a tight with skin, and the meat's real tight together, and it's going to separate that, and it's going to give me a path, if you will, down to the crotch or the genital area.
Yeah, and so we're just going to try not to cut into the meat. Don't worry if your first rabbit that you do looks like it got hacked, because it's still edible. If you are selling the meat, you're going to want to avoid that because people like nice, clean meat. But it's still edible. Just don't be afraid to take some time.
Okay, so what I did is I made my cut. I could see it separated. It flops open pretty easy when you get there. And again, now what I'm doing is pulling down. And because this is a young rabbit, this job is easy. Okay, relatively easy. He just turned 8. My 8-year-old, who is not necessarily, I was a scrawny boy growing up, and he kind of is too. And so he's over there, he's like, hey, can I pull the hide off? And so on the younger rabbits, this is easy work for them. Okay, so that once you get it clear and ready to go, you get it down to this point, they come through and they pull the hides. And right now they're all about it. They're homeschool kids, right? So they get fixed on one thing, and then that's all they're doing. So they're tanning hides like crazy right now. And like I said, we promised that one over there. We're blessing that one.
Didn't have any trouble doing that. The disclosure that they are, they do. This is not the full-grown size. This rabbit, I'm guessing, is probably 6 pounds. I tried to weigh them before I came, but they kind of all got mixed up. So I'm guessing about 6 pounds, but she was, the full size is 10 to 12 pounds. So, yeah.
Okay, so what I want to do at this point in time, this is a female, and so there's really not much difference in dealing with the genitals with a male or a female rabbit. But just to kind of let you know, is it a female, is a male? If you have a question, this is a female, and so what I'm doing again, I'm pulling the skin up and I'm making the pierce through there. Okay, and so like this point, I got a chance. It's about technique. What I want to do, I'm just going to cut through so that I can then peel back. Okay.
Yeah, and we actually just came up with this. It's a PVC pipes that we spray, and we're like, it would be sweet to have a little knife holder here, so that's what that is, if you're wondering.
Okay, So then this is the moment of truth, if you will. You got to deal with both the colon and the bladder, okay? And so what I like to do with the male, this is where part of the, if I understand it correctly, feel free to correct me later. This is where the genitals actually exit the body and then come back to the actual spot where the business happens. But what I like to do is separate it. There's no real benefit that I've noticed for trying to keep it all intact right here. We'll talk about a little bit more in the back. Because there is a pelvic bone, like all the other animals that I've butchered anyway, the ones that we had mentioned earlier, where there's a hollow channel and all that, the colon, the bladder, go through that pelvic bone. And so what I like to do, just like our larger animals, is stay off center. If you go to the center with your knife, you just made a mess. If you stay off center, and I'm toying around with using the pruners to get in there and just clip that bone. And then one of the things I do is because, again, I've got a fair amount of upper body strength here, that I can come up here and I can, because they're younger, I can break that pelvic bone and it pops out of the skin. And so that's a quick thing. So if you're doing it young, you have that option. If they're older, that mother, I tried to do it and I was like, couldn't do it. I had to get in there with the pruners and get the job done. All right. So ultimately what I'm doing here, I could be pulling this too. Just watch my knife though, because I'm not watching. And you all know about the blood circle, right? We teach our kids. We just don't listen to what we say. All right. That was a bad joke, of course. Try humor.
Yeah, so what he's doing right now is separating the hide from the actual body, and we're going to try to leave the tail. If you leave the tail, then when you go to gut it, you have something to hold on to get the chute to actually come down, because nobody wants urine and manure all over the meat. So we're going to try to leave it right there.
And this is where you're going to have a little bit of a challenge, because if you cut through the fur or the hair or not fur, you're going to have greater chance of putting it on the meat. All right, so this is really where, you notice I've got some on there for those that have good eyesight. Yeah, that was one of the things I wanted to mention earlier. That's why the towel's there, that's why the water's there. If you're not in a hurry and you want to keep this as clean as possible, dip your utensils, your knives, your hands, and get them clean, keep them clean, because you're basically cross-contaminating, but you're putting the fur where you don't want it, right? All right, for the sake of speed, I'm just going to cut through this and potentially add fur to it, all right? There, that covers it. If I say I'm intentionally doing it, then
Yeah, and because the rabbit hide is so pliable and soft, you can just use your hands to rip it. We like to grab in between the body and the back and just pull that hide away and then cut straight up and leave the tail. We've done it both ways, but we found this the way to be the easiest.
Okay, so here you get to choose. And so some people like to go ahead at that first knuckle or the knee, if you will, and then remove them now. Or you can, it depends. If you're not doing anything with the hide, you know, if we're just going to throw it away, I prefer to wait. I think it's easier and cleaner. You don't introduce that fur as much. Because again, anytime you penetrate the skin, you have the chance of letting that fur be then introduced to the meat. And so, because we promised Samuel that we're going to give this hide back to him, we got to try to keep it the way we are. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut it off now, because it's much more difficult to do this later. And again, I'm cutting at that knuckle. And if I were, again, a butcher and I really knew what I was doing, I could probably do that with a knife, but I'm not going to. Nor do I know how to. Okay, so, oh yeah. Again, when you're cutting through the bone, you can sit there and painfully try to keep going until it breaks loose. It will if you're stubborn like me, you want to do that. But ultimately, I like to use the knife to finish it off once the bone's done.
Yeah, and because these rabbits are a little easier, because they're younger, you can, the opposite way the paw normally bends, you can actually snap it by hand. You don't have to use this.
Okay, so for pulling the hide down, what I like to do again is make sure that this stuff's separated. If you're going to tan the hide, there's a whole lot of things that you need to do as far as keeping your hide clean, and actually you don't need to do it the first day, it's after 48 hours. Okay, so if you're trying to process things and you're like, well, I'd like to, but I want to get through butchering first, I want to make sure I got enough time. Don't worry about it, just get it off the animal, okay? And then, so what I'm doing, this little trick is nice, is that I'm using it like a handle. So I'm bringing up my hands, I have enough material here where I get my fingers up in there, and I'm holding on to it by itself, okay? And so if you try to grab just the fur, you're going to pull with fur off. You gotta make sure you get the skin. The skin's what's gonna keep it intact as you give the good pull. And so right now what I'll do is I'll pull all the way down. You're like, man, this thing's gonna pull forever. Yeah, it's gonna feel like it. You're gonna get to the point to where the arms or the elbows, I guess. I don't know, they got the elbows, wrist. Maybe that was a wrist that cut off. All right, again, not a biology major here. So right when you get to about the knuckles start popping out, that's where I usually stop and pull them out. So we'll go ahead and do that now.
And yeah, you can see it's very easy to skin them. You just pull straight down. You don't have to slowly cut like your larger livestock, which is nice.
Correct. So this is, when you get to this point, it goes easy, but then it just got wider. Okay, so there's more resistance there. And then you're probably out of leverage depending on how high you're doing it. So sometimes I just have to squat down to get that last little bit. It does seem harder than even when I was up here, even though it was a slow taper, because there's such a transition there with the shoulders, it seems to take a little bit more here. All right, so this is where I'm gonna go ahead and pull these legs free. What I try to do is put my finger in between here and pull. And so as soon as I can, of course that one's kind of difficult. But now, as soon as I got if you will, a foothold, it's easy, okay? And then pull it back here. And this is kind of where you can get splatter. Not so much from the arms, but definitely from the head area. Because if you remember, this thing is still trying to bleed out. There's still a part in here. It may have still been pumping. All that blood is, from here all the way down, might take a while to get down there. And with the fur being over the neck, it could be kind of like trapping some of that stuff. So if you want to come out looking like you got in a really bad fight, just pull real hard and don't disregard the whole thing.
Yeah, so that's part of the reason we like to leave the rabbit out right away is because we don't really like a lot of blood in the meat. You can also do things like ice baths and stuff to help draw the blood out, but we just don't really have that kind of time. So if you didn't actually pull or cut your paws and head off at this point, that's when it would stop and you would cut it. So that is, you're not keeping the hide, it's a lot cleaner to do it that way. The disadvantage of not cutting there is then it's not bleeding the rabbit out. So choose.
That was the cleanest I've had in a long time. Okay, just for the record, it doesn't normally go that well when I pop it off there. Okay, so at this point in time, like I said, you've got that blood clotting going on here. The way we used to do it for hunting is soak it in salt water overnight. Some people say they like to put, I don't know if that was for the gaminess or what it was for. But for us, mom's got lots of work doing. I don't need to add to her plate, especially if it looks like this and it doesn't come from the store. She's not super excited about it. Although when we get it, cleaned up in parts and pieces, that's a little bit more morality. You know what I'm saying? Start looking more like food and less like animal. So at this point in time, I gotta go do what I say. My least favorite part is being very gentle about breaking that hip bone and then getting in and clearing that out. Sometimes what I'll do, actually I'll do that first actually. I'm gonna come in here, I'm gonna go ahead and open this up and I'm gonna pull most of it, recognizing very quickly which one is the colon or the small intestine, I guess, that connects. Again, I'm not a biology guy, okay. The part that connects to the colon, and you can start seeing the pellets developing in there and making its way to the rear. And so I'll pull all that except for a fair amount of it because inevitably I'm probably going to do it today, but things kind of work itself out on the meat. Really good to have a hose. We have a bucket. I'm going to go ahead and switch sides here so that you guys are tired of looking at my back.
So just try to be careful not to puncture the guts because we want to keep the mess down to a minimum. So especially with the larger livestock, we like to run our fingers in there just to make sure we don't puncture the stomach or the urine sac.
Right. So there's two ways to do it. I don't know if you've seen it. They've got those really fancy knives that have the hooks on it. I wouldn't probably mess with it with a rabbit because it goes so well, so easy. The bladder is usually small and tucked back a little bit on the rabbit, so you don't usually come in contact. Again, pay attention to the point of your knife. Where is it going? And so as I was in there, now I've taken it out and kind of messed it up in that sense. But just keep it. See, I'm pulling it out a little bit, and so I'm just I'll be able to go down all the way. I'm pretty sure without puncturing it.
Yeah, and sometimes you do puncture it, and that's okay. Just try to rinse it off right away. We don't notice a taste if you get it really clean after. If you do happen to puncture anything, you could wash it right off, but it's just less mess if you avoid that.
So there's your bladder, as you can see, and you don't necessarily want to get into that, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start pulling and separating the things that I don't want in there. And because I rinse my meat pretty thoroughly and put it in water right away, I'm less worried if I do puncture the bladder and getting that on there, okay? There are some things on the kidney. There's that little green sac. I don't know if anybody knows what that is. Come let me know, because I've been wondering for years. It's crazy and it tastes disgusting. It will taint your meat, okay? But you can easily get in there without touching it with your knife, okay? Gallbladder. That's what the green stuff is? Yeah, it's nasty. That's what I know. I'm simple. That's all I needed to know. Yeah, thank you. That's good enough. Thank you. That's not what you want to do.
Okay, I started saying, is it going to be
Yeah.
washable?
But it's the
Yes,
outside.
absolutely. You can
Yeah,
wash it,
that's
yeah.
why it's inside out, so the fur is still at this point.
Yeah,
great.
it really
So
is.
we're just gonna mess with that later.
Correct.
And it's,
Thank you.
and when tanning, you can tan without washing it, and you can tan with washing it. So it's not a big deal if you get the hide all messy, just kind of scrub it off.
Okay, again, you have to kind of, when you go about doing it, you have to try to remember what is it you're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to present this flawless piece of meat to maybe a gourmet restaurant or whatever, you know, I mean, and that's a real thing. By the way, somebody's got to supply them with rabbit. Rabbit's real on some of these restaurants. Anyway, so what is it that you're trying to give them? Rabbits as a general, let's see if I can say this right, as a primary diet for your meat is not going to contain enough fat to sustain you. After a 6 to 8 month period of just rabbit diet, your body will start shutting down. I don't know the science behind that. Again, I told you, you don't get it by now. I'm not a science guy. But you're going to need something with a little bit more fat. This is not a one and done type animal.
Yeah, so if you're going carnivore, just try to mix the meats, because the rabbit alone is not enough to sustain the body, but you can survive. So you're in a crisis.
Okay, with everything kind of out of the way, knowing that I'm not going to puncture anything, I have recently changed to opening up the cavity all the way, and you have your lungs and heart up in the chest or rib cage area, and so now what I'm doing is trying to just break through this sternum and the where the two ribs sections come together. And again, what it does is it's opening things up, and it allows what shouldn't be in there to kind of go where it needs to go. Okay.
Yeah, and so for yours guys, Sandy, we're trying to keep it all clean, so we did grab a giant trash can. Normally we just use a 5-gallon bucket, and we actually feed all of it to the pigs. So if you don't have pigs, chickens will eat all the guts and meat, but they won't touch things like the paws, the head, and the carcass. So yeah, but the hide, that's what I meant. But so we actually feed it all to the pigs, and they eat everything. So that's why we just get a bucket, and then they're happy on butcher day.
Okay, again, there are lots of things that we underutilize in the rabbit, so, livers and whatnot. I'm sure there's some really, we're notorious in the United States for not eating the whole animal, okay? And I'm kind of against that idea, and I'm slow to get into the know, if you will, about how and what to do. We've recently started grinding our beef with the organ meats and turn it into primal, okay? It's a whole lot more enjoyable to have liver when it's mixed with 80% ground beef, okay? So you could probably do the same. If I talked to the gentleman earlier, he was making sausage out of the whole thing, and he's deboning it and going through that. You could throw that in there. That'd be a great addition. We have livestock guardian dogs plus a poodle. He's a full-size poodle, not a. Well, I shouldn't say any derogatory things about smaller poodles. He's a real poodle, a tall poodle. I mean, is what I meant. Standard. There we go. Sorry. Anyway, so we like to give them good, healthy food.
We also really like bacon though, so that's why it all goes to the pigs, because we like our bacon.
And so essentially, you can cut and remove whatever you want. The heart is actually fought over in our family. So we save all the hearts. The dogs never get that, no matter what animal it is. And that's deer, that's all the way down. Okay. So even though we have 6 hours or 5.5 hours to drive, we're bringing the heart home. Okay. So this is the lungs, of course. We've had nursing moms. If you will, we bred our livestock dogs for a while, and those are good things to par freeze and then feed them as a treat, especially when we're leaving, and they're liver, same thing. But if they're right here, it's easier for me to skip a step. I'm like, here you go, and I call them over there and then we'll feed them. All right.
Yeah, you can also, depending on how big your dog is, feed them some of the guts and stuff too. Great natural dog meat. And if you are doing rabbits for natural dog meat, which we have done some, then it's also a great alternative than dog food because it's not naturally what they used to eat.
Okay, so I put it in water again, 2 things. I'm not going to spend the time to try to draw out all the blood in there myself. We can do the salt water overnight, that's really good. That's what we usually do with the organ meats anyway, just to kind of draw out anything like, the kidneys, if you eat them, you need to eat them within 24 hours. Liver, you can go on a little bit more, but again, we like to grind it otherwise. The hearts, to try to draw out that blood, and so putting it in water helps doing that. All right, so now what I'm going to do is go back up here and separate the thing. What I said is I'm going to use my hands because it's just easier that way. So what I'm doing is I'm putting force on this back hip right here and pulling the legs or the thighs out, and there's going to be like pop. And on this side it popped through on that, on the outside right there. And then so what I'll do is then I'll exploit it with the knife, come in here and start cutting that up. I might even come from the bottom here to get that belly flap out of the way, knowing that I've got some tubing, if you will, that might, not yet. Okay.
And notice, the tail is still there because we haven't gotten to all that stuff yet. It just makes it a lot easier to have a little clean handle.
All right, getting in there, and I'm going to make sure that I'm clearing a pretty large space for me to pull everything through. Okay, and this works really good even for large animals. Okay, and because the connective tissues aren't all that strong, if you lop off the base of the tail where it hits the spine, you can then use the rest of the tail to then go ahead and pull out all the things you want out of there. As long as I don't cut, as long as I don't cut the wrong thing.
When you're not talking this through with everybody, how long does the rabbit take?
It took us about 5 minutes. Okay, so we were going through all this. It literally takes us 5 minutes, and that's not. I mean, like I said, well, I'm not super fast, but when you just stay on point and you're doing it, I think it was like 5. I mean, my longest time when I was maybe didn't have the right first cut, about 7 minutes. So it's not long at all. All right, so I just disconnected that. I might want to come in here and make sure that the connective tissue on the tail is freed. But ultimately, what I'm doing, and you want to again, you're pulling business you don't necessarily want everywhere. You're going to be gingerly about removing this. And so I can see that I've got some stuff that's not quite cut through yet, some flesh, and I'm going to cut to the side, cut towards the, if you will, the foot side of things. Okay, see how that just kind of came through? All right, now I've also got some stuff there. I'm just going to kind of cut through. Now I'm going to speed this up a little bit because I think the business, the important stuff's been done, and what I'm going to do then is start breaking it down and showing you what I do. So at this point in time, I hose it out, clean it out real nice. What I'm going to do though instead is I'm going to start separating it out and parting it out. My favorite place to start is down on the bottom and working up because first of all, it's hanging from up here. Some people get carried away and they're like, oh, I got my loppers, I might as well, whatever. I've used loppers before, by the way, because I couldn't find my pruners, and kids can help you then, right? They can get up there with pretty good reach and get it done what needs to be done.
Yeah, so at this point, if you want to leave a whole rabbit, just lop these off and you're going to wash it off, and then you can package it, you can vacuum seal it or wrap it however you want to, but we are going to part it today for your sake.
Okay, so what I want to do, the front is really easy. You see the shoulder blade right there, and what I do is exploit that and pop out the bone, the shoulder blade, and then I run down, if you will, the part of the body, and then just go right off. Okay, so that's like the easiest one right there. Okay, I was like, that makes me feel like I know what I'm doing, right? So, and then I'll do that, of course, on the other side.
She took it.
Okay, so then you have some choices to make right now. There's a neck there. You want to leave it in? You want to take it out? I come in with the pruners a lot easier with the loppers because there's a whole lot going on that neck, and the vertebrae are a little bit larger. Take a little bit more force. Some people don't like the belly flaps. I think it's really nice. The dogs love it. So actually what I do is I just kind of come in here right where I know I want to make the separation on the spine, and I just kind of come in. So basically I'll go to the last rib, and I'll make a puncture in, and then I'll turn it and go to the spine. Then I come back out, and boom, that's where I'm going to come in with my pruners, okay? Same thing up here, go right underneath the hips. Again, if I knew what I was doing a little bit more with the anatomy, I would come through and go in between and separate it, but this is working for me, so this is what I do.
Yeah, so just try not to hit the bone, like you said, if you want to keep a sharp knife. And for this cut right here, we are going to go by the last rib. So just go in with the last rib, and then try not to hit the bone and use your bone cutters.
Yep, so
On my pruners, I've got a hook, and so what I try to do is get it in and as close to that bone as possible, because you get a nice, good, firm, this is mechanics, right? That I am. All right. So you put the hook right next to the bone, and you give it a good squeeze. Again, leverage, get out on the pruners would be a little easier, or loppers. Loppers work really good too. And so I could yank, I could cut, whatever I wanted to do, that's done at that point in time. Neck, no neck, you see you've got the blood clot to deal with. All that stuff's kind of hanging out right there. You'll find it actually in the muscle right there, because to some degree that muscle, if you remember, was being damaged. Okay, and so that's where the blood goes.
It does, yeah, it does pretty much wash off when you can soak it if you really can. We don't really notice a difference in taste. We just try to keep everything washed off really clean. And you can part it up however you want, depending on how you're going to cook the rabbit. It's easy. Most of the recipes my mom does are actually, like we do eat off the bone whole rabbit, but we also like to put it in dishes so then she'll pull it off the bone. So it's just easier to have parts doing that. You can do a full rabbit if you want a little roaster, but that's what we do.
So I've had a number of shears, good poultry shears through the years. I say good, maybe that's questionable because I never really liked them after using them so far or so long. Maybe I didn't have good sharpeners, that was the problem, I don't know. It always seems to feel like I sprung them, and I had the big gap between there. So that's why I go here. It's kind of hard for a caveman to beat those up enough. So, especially on something like this. So again, I've cut through the bones right here. I'm going offset from, offset from the spine. And then I can just come through and finish up with the knife. Okay, same thing here. I'm gonna go, if you did a better job than I did, I mean, I'll have just a little bit of meat, but I don't really care. You try to want to make sure, again, that you're not cutting through the fur. All right, Bella, you want to go ahead and wrap this up while I finish these two pieces here? No? No, talk about anything else.
Yeah, so depending on our time, I think we have like 5 minutes left. We're going to try to talk about the hide, but then if you do put your, give us your email, we will send out the full instructions on that if you are interested. So yeah, so you're going to want to cut the hide down the center in between. Here's the belly, if you will, and then you can use a sharp knife or scissors to cut all the way down. Knife is a little bit cleaner, and then turn it first side down and make sure you have a clean environment. We are gonna, I think, yeah, because we're taking this back, we're gonna go ahead and wash the blood off just a little bit. You can wash the whole hide. It lays down better, but you don't have to.
Flat surface.
Okay, so basically you need a flat surface once you get it all washed off. Another thing that you want to do is get the meat. Here's the water. So you want to keep it moist because it starts drying out, right? Dehydrating, if you will. And it's not so much of an issue, but if you don't rehydrate it when you cook it, it'll get hard and it'll be almost like a film. Okay, so if you keep it moist, eat through it, chew through it, no big deal. You let it dry up because you were busy and you weren't thinking, and keep it moist and keep it covered. Also, if you're doing this outside and it's hot, and you don't have a real nice fan like that, it's going to draw flies. Okay, but hopefully this will draw more flies. Yes, and of course, wash your hair off there. Okay.
Yes, and we do actually take this meat inside and we sanitarily wash it off. We're just
getting the immediate. I don't need a mic.
She can make herself heard. She gets that from me.
Yeah, so because there's a lot of blood here on the neck, we're just gonna try to wash it off. It comes off pretty easy because there's just little blood clots, but yeah, like I said, we haven't really noticed a big difference in cooking it. You can be more picky and precise if you really want to scrub the meat, but it doesn't really affect the flavor.
So then, of course, meat preservation, how you go to store it and get it ready to cook. There's nothing better than a fresh, cleaned or butchered animal to cook up for that evening or the next day if you want to throw it in a slow cooker.
Yeah, you don't have to let it age. Just say you can cook it that night, you can cook it right after, or you can wait and put it in the freezer and cook it a couple months later.
Yeah, so the fastest, easiest way is to throw it in a glass thing like that, and again, throw it in water. Even though we did a little bit of soaking, you could do that for the next 2 days and still discolor the water to get all the blood out of it.
Yeah, if you really want to be picky, you can do a salt bath if you really want to pull all of the possible blood out. Like I said, you don't notice a difference in flavor, but it's all about whatever you want.
Correct. So then again, you can use Ziploc bags, Tupperware, vacuum seal.
Yeah, if you are vacuum
Butcher paper.
sealing, like wrapping a paper towel or something around the bone, because we have had issues in the past with it puncturing.
Correct.
If you don't have name brand quality vacuum seal bags, it will puncture through and it will essentially get freezer burn. So try to just somehow protect the bone.
Yeah, so vacuum sealing, that's a whole other conversation, but it seems like a great idea, but honestly, if you don't spend a whole lot of money on a machine and bags, you're limited at that, okay? Because we bought the Costco brand, and I thought it was a really nice one. I mean, anything I spent over $150 for is like pretty decent. I was disappointed because there was too much moisture, and so there's a couple different steps in there drying it out, and so we talked about a gentleman the other day where they have a processing room, and so having these different steps, again, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, that would be a great thing to add to it. I have a drying rack of some sort with maybe a fan on it to keep the flies off while it's drying out. These are all wonderful things. You know, cooking pans, like those big cooking sheets, the lifts on them, stainless steel, those are great things to have. Any of these little additions will improve your setup and experience that much better. Okay, I think we are out of time. I'm not sure if we have time for question and answer or not, but always come on side here and pull us aside if you have any questions.
Yeah,
Feel
and
free
if
to come on
you
up.
do get us your email, since we weren't able to get to the full high canning thing, we will send out a full step-by-step instructions on that.
Yes. Hey guys, thank you for your attention and time. We appreciate it.